there's a lot of women that would trap men by getting pregnant. And it's not necessarily that they want to be with the man, but if the man is doing okay, then they pretty much want his substance. And so, otherwise, there's other men out there that will actually be interested in her, but she wants to ruin this particular man's life. And not only is she ruining his life, she's ruining the children's lives because they're not going to be together ultimately. She just wants a paycheck for the next 18 to 21 years. So there's dudes like me that trying to warn men about women like this, and there's plenty of them out there. Listen, guys. Try that spirit. Make sure you know who you're getting involved with and study her characteristics. Don't just fall into her quiver when she spreads it. It could be the JJ trap, and you do not want that.
This is why I say it's hard for men out here. You can't even trust your own wife. My wife and I have been married almost 9 months. We tied the knot last December. We came into the relationship both wanting children. However, we had mutually discussed and agreed to wait until we owned a home. I finished school recently, and we had our finances in order more to start trying. The entirety of our relationship, she's been on the pill as her preferred method of birth control. My wife is out having dinner with her parents tonight while I'm hanging out at the house with some friends. She had ordered groceries to be delivered earlier today, and when they arrived, I of course started putting things away. One of the items she purchased was a pregnancy test, which was such a shock that I literally felt my stomach drop when I saw it. Immediately I called her and asked her why on earth she ordered a pregnancy test. Turns out about a month ago she decided to stop taking her pill because she thought we were ready for children. So how you going to decide that I am ready for children without talking to me first? I asked why she wouldn't get my input on something so huge, and she replied that she wanted to surprise me. Look, you can surprise your man with a lot of things in this world. Another girlfriend, steak dinner, BJ's foot rubs, and he will appreciate those things forever. One thing that a man is never happy with being surprised with, no matter how much he may lie to you, is a kid.
Well, you just heard the male perspective, so now I'll share mine. Newsflash, it's the same. Today, we're going to be discussing premeditated pregnancies. Not to be confused with pre-planned pregnancy, that's when both parties agree to conceiving a child. I want to talk specifically about what happens when women intentionally pursue pregnancy from men who've made it clear that they either don't want or aren't ready for a baby. If the pregnancy happened in a context where both parties were involved in the relationship and neither of them made a concerted effort to prevent pregnancy, then the situation might not be the same as one where deceit occurred. In that case, it may be more about the challenges of dealing with an unexpected life change. I know it's a complex and controversial issue, but the conversation needs to be had. It's happening far too often, and it's an emotional issue that raises questions about autonomy, about trust, and the responsibility in relationships. By autonomy, I mean personal autonomy, or having control over your own body and life decisions. And by trust, I'm talking about two consenting adults being intimate and trusting each other to be honest about their desires and their boundaries. And by responsibility, well, for the sake of this video, I'm talking about the responsibility of respecting your partner's wishes when they don't align with yours and being supportive of their goals and aspirations, whether it's personal or professional. In order to have this conversation, we first have to talk about motivations behind these type of decisions because there are challenges and risks involved. And all parties are impacted, especially the child. Things like consent and reproductive rights, they get ignored when you don't consider the consequences of bringing new life into the world. So why do some women choose to get pregnant despite knowing that the father doesn't want to be involved? No matter how ineffective the plan, some women will purposely get pregnant just to keep a man. She won't even disclose the fact that she's actively trying to get pregnant or that she's purposely avoiding birth control. I know that's a drastic approach, But out of sheer manipulation and desperation, some women will stop using birth control without telling the man and then pretend to have this insatiable appetite for intimacy. And this takes place when she knows her body is fertile, during ovulation. This form of manipulation makes the man believe that there's no risk of pregnancy, and it also increases the likelihood of unprotected intimacy. Some women will take more drastic measures, like they'll poke holes in the condoms or secretly remove it altogether during intercourse. Some stand on their head or take vitamins and mineral supplements, and this isn't something that happens by chance or without some form of an internal struggle. For some women, the desire to hold on to a man or secure a relationship, it can be extremely powerful. Women will further manipulate the situation after she misses her period by emphasizing how fate or destiny has led to the pregnancy, or how a child is a blessing and it's God's will for the relationship. If she's lucky, this will create emotional pressure on the man for him to stick around and take responsibility, even though it wasn't even his intention nor his desire to have a child. There can also be emotional and psychological reasons behind this, and although it doesn't justify the behavior, understanding the underlying causes, well, it can help shed light on motivations behind the premeditated pregnancy. While everyone's motivations are different, there's a psychological and emotional story behind why some women might resort to this kind of strategy, if you will. Some women are codependent, or they have an underlying fear of abandonment. They may have deep seated fears of being left alone. It could stem from childhood issues after losing a parent or being rejected in a previous relationship. If a woman believes that her partner might not commit to them in the long term, she might see pregnancy as a way to create a bond that feels permanent. For some women, the thought of being a mother can give them a sense of purpose or fulfillment that they don't currently feel in the relationship. Some women have low self esteem. There are women who feel that the only way to keep a man's attention or love is by tying him down with something significant, like a child. Low self esteem can cause people to look for validation, and for some women, they might mistakenly believe that becoming pregnant will guarantee the man's commitment to the relationship. The concept of motherhood is sometimes gets idealized, and women might feel like they need to fulfill that role to be valued in society. This pressure can be heightened with the idea of having children when it's tied to a romantic relationship. Now, we've heard the saying that you can't change a person, but some women honestly hope for change following a pregnancy. They think that having a child is going to change the dynamics of the relationship and convince the man to step up and take responsibility. And that's based on the belief that a child will create a stronger emotional connection or might shift the man's priority and willingness to settle down. In more extreme cases, there might be an intentional effort to manipulate the situation. The woman might consciously or unconsciously believe that getting pregnant is going to give her some kind of control over the relationship, forcing that man to stay and take care of her and the child. One clear sign that the premeditation to get pregnant is a manipulative plot is when the man still chooses to end the relationship after the baby arrives. The woman then becomes so depressed that she even has thoughts of ending her life. The depression is about losing her man, who now also is the father of her child. At that point, she's struggling to see that her life as a mother has just as much value, if not more, than her life as a girlfriend or wife. If there was ever a case for unconditional love, it would be between a mother and a child, or her children. All of these motivations can provide insight into why a woman might choose a premeditated pregnancy. It's important, though, to understand that there's a psychological toll that it can have on both parties involved. For the woman, this decision can cause tremendous emotional distress, even though it's her decision to even plan the pregnancy. If she's aware that her partner doesn't want children and she still goes ahead with the pregnancy, she might experience feelings of guilt or shame or even fear. Maybe the fear of rejection or abandonment, and that can weigh heavily on her mind. Maybe even the potential of raising a child alone. Once the child is born, this can also lead to an emotional crisis for the man. He might feel trapped in a relationship that wasn't fully consensual, leaving him with mixed emotions about her and the child. The discovery that the pregnancy was kept secret can have a huge impact mentally as well. The feeling of betrayal and frustration, it can all be so overwhelming. And if he really doesn't want children, being faced with fatherhood against his will, well, that's going to lead to some resentment and anger. He might feel a sense of powerlessness and that his wishes were totally disregarded. At a minimum, there's going to be a breakdown in trust within that relationship. Both parties can end up feeling isolated and misunderstood and even conflicted, with the child eventually being caught in the middle of all these unresolved issues. The child's well being and emotional development could be influenced by the unhealthy dynamics in the relationship. So, what happens in the end? The decision to get pregnant secretly can have long lasting consequences, not just on the relationship, but on all the parties involved. I'm talking about a breakdown of the relationship despite the initial hope that the child might keep the relationship intact. In actuality, this type of trickery will often have the opposite effect. In a lot of cases, the man will feel betrayed and manipulated, and this is going to lead to an automatic breakdown in trust. If the relationship was already unstable, the secret pregnancy is going to push it right over the edge. And that's going to result in a breakup or emotional distance between that couple. The emotional burden on both the woman and the man can be significant. For the woman, the feeling of carrying the weight of the pregnancy decision can lead to anxiety. She may become depressed or have this huge feeling of guilt. For the man, the sense of betrayal can conjure up feelings of resentment and mistrust, and this makes it difficult for either one of them to move forward, at least in a consensual or healthy way. When a child is born into this type of scenario, the challenges of parenting under strange circumstances, it can be so difficult to overcome. The mother might feel overwhelmed and unsupported, while the father might feel disconnected or forced into a role he never wanted in the first place. This could affect the child's development as they grow up in an environment filled with tension and a lot of unresolved conflict. Kids might not fully understand the dynamics, but they know when things aren't going well in the household. And as they get older, they sometimes blame themselves for even being born. If the man doesn't want to be involved in the child's life, but he's legally recognized as the father, oh, there's going to be some legal and financial consequences. This includes child support obligations, custody battles, visitation schedules, and ongoing tension as the father might be required to provide financial support even though he didn't consent to the pregnancy. The man isn't necessarily wrong, in my opinion, for leaving if he feels manipulated or coerced into parenthood. After all, everyone has the right to make decisions based on their own well being, right? But leaving a relationship and abandoning the child, that's not something that should be taken lightly. Men divorce their wives, not their children. And if the child was born out of wedlock, that almost guarantees that marriage is not in the cards because trust has been broken. When the situation involves manipulation or deceit, his feelings of being trapped are valid, but the child still deserves to be raised in a supportive environment. But what goes on inside the woman's head when her plan fails? I'm talking about when she has the baby but loses her man. I'll tell you what, she goes from being manipulative to being deceitful. The baby is going to be used as a pawn yet again, but this time to receive child support and to practice parental alienation. Turning the child against the father and saying things like, Mommy loves you, but Daddy didn't want me to have you. If the child resembles the father too much, that child might become a victim of her attitude. The mother will know when she's been defeated, but she won't go down without a fight. She's going to become what's known as a bitter baby mama, coupled with a woman scorned. And let's not forget that there's also an ethical component to this, and that raises important questions about consent, autonomy, and responsibility. One of the main ethical concerns is the issue of reproductive autonomy. If a woman decides to get pregnant without a man's consent, doesn't that infringe on his reproductive rights? I mean, it could be argued that forcing someone into fatherhood against their will is a violation of his personal autonomy and his right to choose. That right isn't reserved just for women. On the flip side, though, there's also the question of agency. Women, like men, should have the right to make decisions about their own bodies, right? But when these decisions are made in secrecy or without full transparency, that's going to lead to some ethical and moral dilemmas. At the end of the day, the question comes down to, is it ever justifiable to deceive or manipulate someone into parenthood? For me, it's a no. But the answer to this is complex and it depends largely on perspective. Trust, communication, and mutual respect should always be the foundation of any relationship, especially when it involves bringing a child into the world. So there you have it. The decision to secretly get pregnant in an attempt to keep a man is filled with layers of emotional complexity and ethical dilemmas. It's a decision that can forever alter the course of everyone involved, especially the child who may grow up in a world of conflict and unresolved issues. Open communication and mutual consent is key. If both partners aren't on the same page regarding children, those difficult conversations must be had before making any drastic decisions. Parenthood should be a shared conscious choice, and any attempt to manipulate or coerce someone into it, it can cause long-term harm to both people and the relationship as a whole. So if you're in a relationship where you're unsure about your partner's feelings about children or the future, the best course of action is to sit down and have honest and direct conversations about your desires. Relationships thrive on trust and communication, and bringing a child into the equation, well, it's a responsibility that should never be taken lightly. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if a man no longer wants to be in a relationship with you, getting pregnant by him isn't going to make him want you. In fact, you're really going to run him away, especially when he really didn't want to get you pregnant in the first place. What are your thoughts? Let's continue this conversation in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.